Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast. G'day! Welcome to an episode of Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast, where I open the cockpit to some of the best and brightest in personal finance, as well as those who've reached or are on their way to financial independence. Before we get started today, remember anything on the show is provided for general information only and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should always do your own research when making any financial decision. Online gambling is an industry worth tens of billions of dollars in Australia every year. Australians are actually the biggest gamblers in the world, and per capita, our annual bill exceeds $1,300 per person. It is also a huge problem in Australia, destroying tens of thousands of Australian lives every year, and I've unfortunately witnessed this firsthand. It is estimated that 1% of all adult Australians will develop significant gambling problems, and up to 2% of Australians will experience moderate risks that make them more vulnerable to problem gambling. However, the real risk is with younger Australians, where rates of addiction skyrocket up to 7%, and for every problem gambler, there is estimated to be 6 to 10 Australians that experience negative effects. Because so many Australians are literally throwing their money away on gambling, bookies are scrambling over each other to try and get the most number of people hooked on their sites. One way they do this is by offering huge sign-up bonuses and ongoing bonus bets to keep you hooked. Although there are now some regulations on sign-up bonuses and advertising, they very much still exist, and bookies will offer huge incentives to sign up and gamble with them. After all, it is a drop in the ocean compared to what they'll make back off only just a few problem gamblers. Now, this leads itself to an opportunity. These bonus sign-up offers can be exploited, similar to how you might do so with credit card churning or bank account sign-up offers. It only works if you're incredibly disciplined and do it exactly right. In its purest form, match betting is just a type of arbitrage or dealing. It exists primarily because bookkeepers are giving away free bets in order to encourage their punters. Matched bettors will collect these free bets and then go to a betting exchange where they can essentially sell them for 70 to 80% of their face value. So essentially, matched betting is a technique that allows you to profit from these bookies' loss-leading promotions. However, it is a little more complicated than that. It's not just selling the bonus bets, and there are a few more steps involved. Bear with me here. If you place your bet with your free bonus money, that is called the back bet. You then match that back bet with a lay bet on a betting exchange. A lay bet is a bet that means you win if the outcome on the back bet doesn't happen, often referred to as hedging your bets. This matched bet means that no matter what outcome happens in the game, you either win at the bookmaker or you win on the betting exchange. As you've only paid for one side of the bet, the other being the free bonus bet, you are guaranteed to make a profit. A very simplified version of this could simply be using two different bookies to place opposing bonus bets on a two-outcome game like the footy grand final, using, of course, the respective bonus bets. This cuts out the need for a betting exchange, but realistically means you will get a much lower extraction rate as you are guaranteed to lose all of one of your bonus bets. In this case, a 50% extraction rate would be your best possible outcome. And of course, this will be dragged down by fees and other transactional costs. By using a betting exchange for lay or matched bets, allows you to improve your bonus sign-up offer extraction rate up to about 70 to 80%. Of course, you will never get 100% due to the fees and transactional costs. I even managed to track down someone from a digital marketing agency that had one of Australia's biggest online bookies as their client. They explained that not only were they aware of match bettors, they actively factored them into their marketing budgets. If bookies cotton on to you doing this, you can get gubbed. This means either they won't send you any more bonus offers, or you can actually get kicked off the platform entirely and be added to the bookie's secret blacklist database. Now, there are also risks if you rush in and don't get this done exactly right. If you stuff up the match bet, you can basically lose all of your money and waste all of your time. I honestly can't do this justice and explain it properly because ultimately I'm still learning how to do it myself. Basically, the best I've found is that you can make somewhere between $20 to $50 an hour online, mostly on weekends. It is definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme. However, there are certainly a few catches you need to be aware of. And also, realistically, you will need $1,000 or so to get started. So, is it worth your time? Well, ultimately, that depends on how much you value your free time, especially weekends when this is the most profitable. In order to make a bit more sense of match betting, Nico from Bonus Bank has jumped on board to share some of his experiences with match betting. All right, this evening, or should that be morning, we've got Nico from Bonus Bank to talk a little bit about match betting. So, Nico, it's morning for you, isn't it?
It is. I am in sunny Scotland right now, in the winter weather, and making the most of it, I guess.
Hey, well, you're feeling at home there with that accent?
Yes, I am. It's the first time I've actually been here for quite some time. I generally live abroad, but COVID has brought me back here.
Well, it's the opposite of where I'm at in Australia. It's starting to get bloody hot and the sun is beating down. I've been doing some DIY renos around the family home and am a little bit sunburnt at the moment.
Oh, I can imagine.
So look, I want to ask you a little bit more about your travels later, but of course the first thing on the menu here is matched betting. So the first question I want to ask is, how did you actually discover match betting? How would you explain it to someone like me?
Okay, how I first discovered it was purely by chance. I consider myself very lucky. I was working at the time for a charity. We did financial education, or it was a financial advice charity, and my role was financial education. So I would go out to schools and talk to school kids. I'd go into old folks' homes and do presentations. And I did a lot of one-on-one work with people that were having money troubles, basically. And I would sit down with them, we'd do budgets, and we'd look for ways that they could reduce their expenditure, maybe cut money on their bills, that kind of thing. And in the UK, there's a website called moneysavingexpert.com. And it's this great website. It's got lots of, I guess you would call it consumer advice, but lots of really useful information and resources about the best deals that are available, how you can get them, and so on. So that was kind of my go-to place for content. So I would read all of that stuff, learn all about how it all worked, and then I would pass that on to the people that I was working with. And within the the Money Saving Expert website, they had a forum, and one of the sub forums was called Gambling Introductory Offers and Loopholes. And I was on there in work one afternoon. I was bored, just killing time, and I thought I'll take a little bit of a look at this sub forum and see what it's all about. And they had this basically just one really long thread that explained the basic principles of match betting, and that's how I kind of stumbled across it. And I'll be honest with you, I read it, and my first instinct was, yeah, that's probably a scam. There's a catch here somewhere that I'm not seeing. Because, it sounds pretty scammy. I'm the first one to admit it.
Well, it took me a while to come around to it as well.
Okay, I mean, that's great. I'm glad you were willing to give it a shot, because a lot of people do put their guard up and aren't willing to put their toe in the water, so to speak. And for me, it took a couple of months. So like I said, I was doing this on work time, and basically whenever I get bored in work and I didn't have anything else to do, I would go into these forums and just look for something interesting. And I always gravitated back to this one post that explained it, and I must have read it, I don't know, a dozen times before eventually I kind of got up the nerve and thought, right, I'm going to try this. I think I've wrapped my head around it a little bit, so I'm going to try it. And I'm very glad I did, because it's one of those things that you can read about it as much as you want, but actually going through the process of doing it, things kind of just fall into place and it makes sense. So yeah, that's how I get started. I guess the other part of your question is, what is it exactly? And it can be hard to explain. Like I said, you can read about it, you can hear about it, but actually doing it makes a difference. But I'll give it a shot at explaining it. So match betting is basically a way that you can make money from the promotions that bookmakers offer. And you see these promotions all the time. Gambling in Australia is a huge business. I think Australians bet more per capita than any other country in the world. So the bookies are all competing to try and win new customers. And they do that by offering promotions, which you can think of like they offer enhanced odds, which is the equivalent of like a discount in the supermarket. They also do bonus bets where they say, if you deposit $100, we'll give you an extra $100 bet. So that's kind of like a buy one, get one free type offer that they're giving you. And depending on the type of offer it is, we've got a lot of different strategies that we use to turn that into risk-free cash. But a lot of it is based around the existence of a betting exchange, which is a little bit different from a bookmaker. It's kind of like the stock exchange where you've got people buying and people selling. It's like a peer-to-peer betting market. So what you can do is you can place your bet at the bookie, which is kind of the equivalent of buying it there at the bookie, and then you can go to the exchange and you can sell that to someone else at the exchange. And if you imagine with those offers that are deposit 100 and we'll give you $100 bonus bet, that's kind of like your buy one, get one free. So you're buying one at the bookie, but you then have two to sell at the exchange. And that's how you make your profit.
So it's very similar to the credit card sign-ups.
Yeah, it's quite similar to that. You're basically just looking for these offers. I guess what they call them is loss leaders, where the company, whether it's a credit card company, a supermarket, bookie, whatever, they're using this deal to try and entice people in, with the hope that those people take the deal, but then go on and spend a bunch more money, and they end up in profit overall. But if you're smart, you just take the deal and you don't spend any more money after that, or you do whatever the minimum requirements are, and you end up walking away with a profit.
What kind of dollars can people make from match betting, and what kind of dollar rates per hour have you been able to make?
Well, it really depends how much time you want to put into it. So there's definitely diminishing returns after a certain point. So if you're just looking to try and maximize your dollars per hour rate, then with a little bit of experience, once you learn the basics of like horse racing promotions, you can come in on a Saturday afternoon and do 4 hours, and you might walk away with $500 pretty easily if you've got a bit of experience. Maybe more realistic for someone starting out is $200-300 in that 4 hour period. So, that's a pretty high hourly rate there.
It's pretty attractive. Like, a lot of people talking about side hustles, and this can be quite a viable alternative then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like I said, I discovered match betting in 2008, and it was the first side hustle I really tried, or at least that I can remember. I think I might have did some of that survey stuff at one point as well, and you were talking about pennies for filling in the surveys. You know, your hourly rate would be way, way, way below minimum wage. Whereas with match betting, you're making probably more money per hour than you make in your full-time job. You know, unless you're a lawyer, or, I don't know, maybe a pilot, you're going to be making a lot more than you can make anywhere else, and certainly more than you would make in most other side hustles or part-time jobs, that kind of thing.
One of the bonuses about gambling income in Australia is that it's actually tax-free.
Yeah, it's tax-free pretty much anywhere in the world because it's viewed as being, you know, it's down to luck, and there's just as much chance that you can lose money as you can win money. Obviously, the bookies themselves are taxed, but it's very uncommon these days for the punter to be taxed. And the ATO aren't interested if you're actually hedging your bets via a betting exchange or whatever. They just look at the fact that it's money that's coming into your account from a bookmaker, so therefore it's tax-free. So as you said, that's one of the other benefits of it.
My hourly rate was probably a little bit lower than I'd hoped.
I guess the thing that you have to take into consideration is, yes, it can be 50 to 60 bucks an hour for sure. You maybe not quite get that midweek, but you could get a decent, 30, 40 bucks an hour midweek. But the thing is that there's maybe only 1 hour worth of work. So on a Thursday, for example, you might have one NRL game in the evening. There might be some promotions on horse racing in the afternoon. So you might be able to make 50 to 100 bucks on a Thursday. But that hourly rate that you're getting is great, but your overall number of hours worked is going to be pretty minimal, which, as a side hustle, that's ideal.
All of the big events and matches are usually going to be on the weekend when most people have their downtime.
Yeah, Saturdays can get very, very busy, depending on the time of the year. So March, April, when the new NRL and AFL seasons are starting up, and you've got the autumn carnival horse racing going on, things get very busy, which for us is great because it means it's very profitable. But then you've got other times of the year. Right now we're middle of November. There's not really much Australian sport happening at the moment. We're kind of waiting on the Big Bash League to start in a couple of weeks. There's some horse racing on a Saturday, but middle of the week's pretty quiet. So it's seasonal in the same way that sport is seasonal. There's always different things that we can be doing, but there's definitely days of the week and months of the year which are busier than others.
How detailed do you need to know the sport that you're betting on?
That's the beauty of it, is that you really don't need to know anything at all. Obviously, it helps if you've got a basic understanding of the markets or the teams, but that's stuff that can be learned pretty easily by anyone. You don't have to know the individual players within a team or the history of certain teams and whether they play better in the first half or the second half. That stuff's all irrelevant because what we're looking at is numbers, essentially. It's more of a mathematical process than it is a sports thing, and for the maths, we've got calculators that take all the heavy lifting out of that as well. There's actually an argument to be made that having no knowledge of the sport is actually beneficial, because people who do think they understand the sport get more tempted to put their own opinion into the bets that they place rather than just following the process of match betting and being quite robotic about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read an article on your site about exactly that topic, when people start deviating from the calculator and the script, that ends up undermining their performance.
Yeah, it can do. And, I've been guilty of it myself in the past. I follow football or soccer for Australians, and I have opinions on games. I have ideas in my head of things that I think are going to happen. And what I have done in the past, and I still do to this day, is I maybe weight my bets a little bit differently. So I make a profit no matter what happens, but I make more if the thing that I think is going to happen actually happens. And, obviously, I'm not an expert. if I was that good, I wouldn't need match betting. I would just place the bets myself, and that would be the end of it. So I don't know what kind of effect that's had on my overall returns over the years, but it also scratches my gambling itch. So I have no risk at all, but I'm scratching that itch. I've got that little bit of interest when I'm looking at the results, but my profit's still going up no matter what happens.
Oh, it's a slippery slope, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would recommend that in a official sense. It's what I do. I know a lot of people do it. But yeah, you're right. It can be a slippery slope. You definitely don't want to put too much of yourself into it. And we definitely recommend that anyone starting out just sticks with the tried and true equal profit across the board. But if you do like a punt, then it is something that you could do, and it's definitely better than just going down to the TAB on a Saturday and handing over your paycheck.
That's actually a really great segue, because I wanted to ask you a little bit about, the opportunities financially that match betting has opened up to you.
Well, as I said, I discovered match betting in 2008, and I've always liked to travel. My first stint in Australia was 2003, I think 2004 I came back. I did the whole work and holiday thing. Before I did that, I did an exchange program at university, so I lived in Canada for a year. So traveling has always been kind of a big part of my life. But by 2008, when I discovered match betting, I had been at home for sort of 4 or 5 years. I had a good job. I had a mortgage, I was kind of on track for the kind of traditional lifestyle, I guess. But I was bored. I was miserable. I was desperate to kind of go away somewhere or do something a bit more interesting. Round about that time, I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I don't know if you've read that, but it kind of talks about designing your own lifestyle, and you do that either through things like generating passive income through whether it's a business or whatever. And also the big thing that he talks about is taking mini retirements. So I guess this is maybe a predecessor of FIRE. So it wasn't talking about retiring early, it was talking about take a mini retirement now, and then you can go back to work, and then you take another mini retirement and so on. And that idea really appealed to me. My main problem at the time was that I didn't have this passive income that he talked about to finance it. But I had just discovered match betting, and although it's not passive, it was something that I could do from anywhere in the world. So although I wasn't going to be able to just disappear and go traveling and wake up every morning and just check my bank account and see what had come in, but I could spend a couple hours match betting and it would cover the cost of my living expenses wherever I was. So yeah, shortly after reading that book, I basically quit my job and bought a one-way ticket to Argentina. And I didn't have much of a plan at the time. The idea was that I had enough money in the bank and I could generate enough income while I was over there that I could at least survive for 6 months to a year. And yeah, I kind of went and just never really came back.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't planned. I just kind of stumbled from one place to the other, and I was always looking to see, how's the bank balance looking, first of all? How much longer can I keep doing this? And I kind of expected that it was going to run out at some point, but somehow I managed to keep stumbling along and paying for whatever I had to pay for. I kind of went from Argentina to Colombia based on a recommendation from a guy that I met in my Spanish class. And then I went from there to Panama. I did a boat trip based on a recommendation from someone that I met in a backpacker hostel. And I ended up living in Panama for 1.5 years. And then from there, I kind of ended up in Nicaragua by chance. And basically, that's been my home for the bulk of the last decade. But yeah, all of this was made possible by the fact that match betting was just topping up my savings wherever I went. And, during the whole time, I was always looking for other opportunities, other business ideas, trying to find something that would make it permanent, I guess. Because match betting was paying the bills, but I wasn't really saving much. And, during this time, I kind of crept past the age of 30 and was starting to think, okay, I need to find something a bit more sustainable. So I had a bunch of different businesses and business ideas throughout that period. But match betting was the one consistent income stream that I had throughout. So really, it definitely changed my life and opened up that opportunity to me to go out and see all these places and do all these things. I'm now engaged to a Nicaraguan girl, so that's obviously a major thing in my life that happened as a result of match betting.
Oh wow! Congratulations, mate. So all I have to do to find a wife is just get on match betting, eh?
Well, I mean, it took me about 4 or 5 years after discovering match betting. So,
all right, great. So I'm on track 2024.
All right, I'll book a date out in my calendar for you.
So look, we've talked a bit about, I guess, the positive sides of match betting, how much you can make. Probably the biggest drawback I can see is, as you mentioned, it's a pretty active side hustle. You need to continually give time to it. Other than the fact that it is an active income earner, what are some of the risks or other downsides of match betting that you've found?
The big one that we always point out, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but if you're someone that's got a history of gambling problems or any kind of addiction, really, you definitely don't want to be spending time on bookmaker websites. Even if you're following the match betting strategy to a T, the bookie websites are full of these flashy images trying to encourage you to bet more and so on. And it could be a slippery slope for some people. We definitely don't recommend it to anyone with any history of addiction because, although match betting itself is risk-free if you follow these processes, once you veer away from that kind of defined strategy, then it can be a slippery slope for people.
I've seen firsthand some of the damage that gambling addiction can have.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's a very real problem in Australia. As I mentioned, there's more per capita than anywhere else in the world. And we're kind of fully on board with anything that can help reduce that problem. And a lot of our members like to see themselves as kind of a Robin Hood. It's a Robin Hood thing that they're doing where they're going after these big betting companies that prey on people with addiction problems and so on, and we're going in and kind of sticking it to them and taking some of that money back. But we would never recommend that anyone who's actually had a gambling problem in the past try and do that because the bookies are set up to try and exploit these things. They'll have their responsible gambling images and they'll have a link to gambling helplines and so on. But that's just to tick the box with the regulators. Everything else about the sites is designed to draw you in and make you bet more because, that's their business model.
Now, something else that's really interesting, if you're too good at match betting, you get kicked off of these sites, don't you?
I would rephrase that a little bit differently because if you're good at match betting, you'll know how to disguise the fact that you're match betting. But a lot of people, the bookies don't like us. That's just a fact. We hurt their bottom line. So they're always going to look for people who are match betting, and what they do is they just ban you from promotions. And because we make 90% plus of our profits from promotions, that's usually the end of it for most people. There are strategies that you can use to try and disguise that a little bit, to try and blend in with the regular gamblers, but it is a problem that you will hit, and you'll hit it with some bookies a lot faster than others. And like I said, you can delay that process by taking certain approaches, but it is something that happens. Yeah, there's no denying that.
There's a funny name for it. What's the name?
We call it getting gubbed.
Yeah, getting gubbed. Yeah. Oh god, that made me laugh when I first heard that. Look, I actually managed to speak. I tracked down someone who had actually previously worked for one of these betting companies, and I
Yeah.
actually asked her a little bit about match betting, and just like you say, she said they hated it, but they actually budgeted in their marketing and promotional budget for a certain percentage to actually be sort of siphoned away from match betting. So I found that very interesting.
That is interesting. I've never heard that before, but I can completely believe it because the thing is, the only way the bookies can 100% stop match betting in its tracks is to stop offering promotions. As I said, the problem gamblers are worth so much to them that they have to use these promotions to compete with the other betting companies. So they're never going to do that. Do you know, no one is going to unilaterally say, do you know what, we're just going to stop offering promotions. So the bookies have always offered promotions. We always find ways to exploit them. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game. And you just have to stay one step ahead.
Oh, great. Yeah, cat and mouse. And I guess probably the final drawback, and we alluded to it earlier, was that typically the best profits from match betting are, weekends when there's the most games.
Yeah. So it can take over your Saturday afternoon if you allow it to. But the big profit, the real high income per hour is on a Saturday afternoon. So if you can even spend 2-3 hours on a Saturday, it's going to make a big difference.
If I could just ask for your top tips for match betting, what would your top 3 be?
Probably all of the top 3 would be patient. Right? People really rush into things because obviously we're talking about big sums of money, and as I say, it usually happens. There's 2 stages. There's the really tiptoe stage where people don't trust anything and they're very reluctant to even get started. And then they get started and all of a sudden they see that it works and then they want to go at 100 miles an hour. And if you go 100 miles an hour, there's going to be a couple of things that happen. One is that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to try a strategy that is a bit too advanced for you, or you're going to, mistype a number somewhere. There's lots of mistakes that you can make if you don't just take your time, make sure you've got the fundamentals down, and double check everything, and just have a bit of patience generally. So that can happen. But the other thing that happens is what we already talked about with the bookies gubbing you. So if you just try and go 100 miles an hour and you're hitting every available bonus and so on, it's going to flag up very quickly to the bookie what you're doing. So it's important to kind of go slow, mix in some camouflage bets that are going to disguise what you're doing, and just trust in the fact that by having this kind of more sustainable approach, you're going to make that money in the long term. You don't need it all today. What you want is this constant week after week, month after month side income coming into your bank account. And how you do that is just by being a little bit patient. So that would definitely be my number 1 tip. Yeah, and I guess, the other tip that I would have is just ask questions. It kind of falls into the same category, but don't be afraid to ask questions from people who have been doing it for a while. We've got a great community at Bonus Bank. We recently moved our chat room to Discord, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's been a great move for us. And there's always, any time of day, there's people in there that are always happy to answer questions. So, you want to make sure, don't guess at things when there's that community is available to you. We're always happy to answer emails and questions from beginners. So, that's definitely important as well.
Yeah, well, teamwork's important, and learning from experienced people is certainly the way to go. I mean, I've personally been guilty in the past. Like, I do tend to dive in. It's probably something I need to listen to you and just slow down.
It's human nature as well. You just want to go for it if you get excited about something as well, which is very easy to do. So it's definitely human nature. But people, we regularly see posts going, "Oh, if only I knew then what I know now. I would have made so much more money. I would have done so much better." So you can know what people know now if you just ask.
So just on that, why did you start teaching people about match betting?
So as I said, I went to Argentina, went to Nicaragua, met a girl, and she actually got a scholarship to go and do her master's degree at University of Queensland. So in
Oh, wow.
2000, we'd been together for maybe about a year at the time, and it was kind of a big deal. And it was like, okay, how are we going to do this? And I went, you know what, I'll come to Australia with you. And that's what we did. And I was aware that Australia had bookies at that time. I was working with the UK bookies, but I really didn't know much about the scene in Australia. And I went, and the first thing I noticed was that there was so much more money available in Australia than there was in the UK. And in part, that's probably due to match betting, because at that point, the UK was already saturated with match betting. I discovered in 2008, this was now 2014, 2015. So there was just tens or hundreds of thousands of people doing it. And when that happens, that line in the marketing budget has to become a bit bigger. And as a result, they started offering smaller and smaller promotions. So it was harder and harder to make money in the UK. But in Australia, no one was doing it. So they were so generous with the promotions that, I basically doubled my income, I think, overnight by moving to Australia, which was handy because the cost of living is a little bit more expensive there than it is in Nicaragua. But,
Yeah.
It was a kind of eye-opening to me when I saw the size of the bonuses and so on. And the other thing that I became aware of was that there wasn't really much of a match betting community or service anywhere. In the UK, there was all these different websites that provided tools and software and so on, and no one was doing that in the Australian market. So, yeah, I guess that was kind of the light bulb moment. I was like, well, we can provide this. And I started speaking with my business partner, who I actually know from high school, but he's lived in Sydney for, I don't know, it must be about 12 years by now, I think. So I started speaking with him, started speaking with some web developers to help with the technical side of it, and we just took it from there, really.
So what kind of things, what kind of tools do you offer online?
Well, I guess the first thing is tutorials. So we've got kind of step-by-step tutorials. Compared to that big long post that I read on Money Saving Expert 12 years ago, I think they're much more digestible. We've tried to make it as simple as possible for people. We've got little quizzes along the way that help test your knowledge and make sure that you're on the right track. And then we provide calculators to do the mathematical side of things. And we've got software which actually scans the bookmaker websites and looks for the best opportunities that are available to make sure that you're maximizing the returns that you get from your bonus bets and so on. So we really try and take a lot of the labor intensive side out of it, and just make it as easy for anyone to get started as possible.
Wow, it's pretty Gucci. So you're sort of covering the whole life cycle there.
Yeah, and the website for us is always a work in progress. We started out with kind of one calculator and one piece of software, and we're constantly adding to it, looking for different strategies and how we can simplify them for our more advanced members. So we've built a whole suite of calculators and different software that we have available at this point. And then the community is really our most valuable feature. Once you've learned the basics, the community is where you get most of your value, because there's so much good information and content that gets shared in there, and advice. That's the thing that you want more than anything. We can get people started, but it's having the community around them that kind of keeps them motivated, keeps them going and learning new things.
Having that online community, I can definitely see how important that would be.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference.
Match betting, it's something I'm still learning the ropes, getting a bit better at. Like I said, my returns weren't as high as I'd hoped for, but I'm getting better at it, and hopefully, I can reach that 50 plus dollars an hour.
It's definitely worth pointing out that you're not going to hit $50 an hour on week one. You have to get those core skills down, and the horse racing, which is where you kind of get those bigger returns, is a kind of intermediate to advanced skill. So you have to be willing to put a little bit of work in at the start, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
So look, Nick, it's been awesome to chat about match betting, but I'd like to ask you a few more questions on, I guess, financial independence now, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So you mentioned earlier that you sort of adopted this side hustle, and you're a bit of a digital nomad. And as you got older, you sort of wanted that traditional financial independence and that passive income. Yeah. So how have your financial journey evolved, and how do you choose to invest your money at the moment?
So I've always been a saver. Since I was a kid, and before I mentioned that I did financial education, I worked in a bank before that, so I've always kind of been around money in that sense. And when I came back from Australia the first time, I had been away for a year, was coming back to live with my parents, which obviously wasn't ideal. So as soon as I got a job, my first thought was, okay, I need to buy a flat, I need to buy somewhere to live. So I bought my first property when I was 22, and I lived in it myself for about 5 years, but I now have it as a rental property. And for a long time, really the only kind of investment that I did was overpaying the mortgage whenever I could, and I didn't really think about much else beyond that. As well, at least I can try and get rid of this debt, and then once that's happened, I'll just have this rental income, which will be a nice kind of little pension, essentially. So I definitely did that for a long time. As I said, when I went to Argentina, and over the years that followed, I wasn't really making enough to be heading for financial independence. I was going for the retired early part without the financial independence. So that... And do you know what? That worked out quite well for me. I think if it had been the other way around, I think if FIRE had existed, or if I had heard of it in 2008, it would have been really easy for me to focus on maximizing my savings rate and trying to earn income and thinking, okay, I need to get to financial independence, and then I can go and travel. I would have been obsessive about it, I think. So the fact that I didn't hear about it maybe worked to my advantage, because I actually went out and just did all of the traveling stuff first. And because of that, I've kind of ended up where I am, which in terms of hitting FIRE and retiring early, that's not something that's really going to be too realistic for me. I'm in my late 30s at this point, so I'm probably talking at least another 15 years before I get anywhere near that. But I've already done the travel stuff, and because I'm in the position that I am now, I actually have the freedom to go and travel at any time. But all of that is possible because of the situation that I'm in now, where I can work from anywhere that there's an internet connection. There's some time zones that are better than others, but basically I can be anywhere. And for me, although I'm not financially independent, I'm getting a lot of the benefits. I think when people aim for FIRE, what they're really aiming for is the freedom to kind of do what you want. It's not about having X amount of dollars in the bank. It's about having the freedom to wake up in the morning and kind of live on your own terms. And I'm probably busier than I've ever been in terms of work, but it's a job that I enjoy. It's my own business, so you kind of feel the rewards of the work that you put in. And as I said, I can do that from anywhere in the world. So I can, if I want to, fly to Thailand or wherever, I can do that. And then if I want to take a couple of days off while I'm there to go to the beach or go on a boat trip or whatever, I can do that, as long as I come back and catch up on the work in the evening or the next day. So I've definitely got a lot of the benefits, I think, that people are looking for from fire without actually having fired yet.
It's a really interesting take on it, Nick, and that digital nomad, designing your own lifestyle. It's increasingly appealing to me. I've sort of recently been getting more and more into websites, particularly.
Yeah, I think it's something that people don't think about, this idea of, okay, can I be away from the office, away from the country possibly, but still make money? I guess that's one of the, I don't want to say it's a weakness in the fire community or in the concept. But I think for a lot of people, and as I said, for myself, it definitely would have been the case because I would have got obsessive about the saving. It can almost be like you're just delaying the gratification. And I think you also have to remember that you should enjoy the moment as well, right now.
So I've never felt like I've deprived myself of anything. And I do, feel like I have a wonderful lifestyle and I'm, fortunate that I can maintain quite a reasonable savings rate. But that is definitely the biggest thing or my biggest drawback with my sort of FIRE journey at the moment is I can tend to become a bit obsessive over things like savings rates and maximizing investment. So I'm trying to take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit more. Listen to the advice from all the smarter people than I am that I've interviewed on this podcast, that all telling me similar things. So if I can take away one or two bits of advice from everyone, I think I'm doing well.
I think like in everything, there's always a balance to be found, and it's very easy to go one way or the other on that, and you just have to find the middle ground. But certainly for a certain type of personality, and as I said, I include myself in it, I can see how it would be really easy to get obsessive about it, and forget to actually stop and smell the roses, as they say.
I guess moving forward, other than reinvesting into your business and paying down your investment property mortgage, do you you mentioned earlier index funds as well? So what kind of index funds particularly interest you?
At the moment, I've mostly focused on tech stocks. I don't know if that's because we're not really a tech business. We have some software and so on, but I think just the way the world's going at the moment, it definitely seems to me that you can't really go wrong with tech. So I've got NDQ, which is sort of the NASDAQ full index, and also FANG, which is just 10 stocks in that one. Is Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, I think there's Tesla, and a few others, the big ones there. I think there's Alibaba as well, which kind of gets you coverage for the Asian market. But personally, obviously I'm not an expert, but I just think, especially with COVID, tech stocks are just going to keep going up. We're talking about vaccines and stuff now, and they have taken a hit since the vaccine news came out. But personally, I think the way we live as a society, as a planet, is changed by what's happened in the last year. And I don't think we're just going to completely revert to the way things were before. So there's going to be more Zoom meetings, more work from home. All of these things are just going to keep happening. So I'm quite happy being in tech, and I'll probably stick to that.
So, Nick, you touched on Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, and I have read that, and that's one of my favorite books. And that's actually what helped push me down the path of online business. So obviously that's going to be one of your top recommendations, but do you have any other awesome books or even, blogs or other podcasts that you've heard that have been helpful to you?
Yeah. So like I said, the 4-Hour Workweek basically changed my life. There's no other way to put it. And I've read most of Tim Ferriss's other stuff. I haven't read the 4-Hour Cook. I'm not much of a cook. But he's got one called Tools of Titans, which I definitely recommend to people. It's basically lots of snippets from interviews that he's done with various people from various different fields, and it's just full of gems of wisdom. And it's the kind of book where you can pick it up and dip into it for a few pages and then put it down and forget about it for a month, and you come back and read another one of the interviews. So that's definitely something I would recommend. I like to read a lot of kind of business and entrepreneurial books when I'm not reading fiction. And one that I'll give you might not consider it a business book, but for me, it's definitely a business book. Have you ever read Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, Total Recall?
No, I haven't.
Honestly, I picked it up by chance, maybe a year ago or so. And Arnie is the biggest hustler of all time, right? This guy, did you know that he was a millionaire before he made his first movie?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, so he basically came over from Austria, broke to compete in a bodybuilding competition. And I don't know what the time scale is. I think it's maybe within 5 years he was a millionaire. He'd made money in property. He bought a lot of land and apartment buildings and stuff. So he made millions in property before he even got into movies. And he just kept hustling. See, in terms of if you want to be motivated to focus on something and really work on something, look no further than Arnie. It's a great story, but it's also like I said, it's a kind of business book in that he sets out to do something and he does it, and it definitely motivates you to go and do the same yourself.
Well, because I have seen him flogging off supplements recently, and I think that's probably another business that he's doing. But I mean, gee, he was even a pretty successful politician, wasn't he? The governor.
He was governor of California. So his life story is absolutely incredible. You know, he's born in 46 in Austria right after the war, and then he went and did all these things, you know, the Mr. Universe and all of that, and then the movies. He was the highest paid actor in Hollywood, and then he was governor of California. It's a pretty incredible life story, but like I said, it's also got some gems in there in terms of motivating you to go out and achieve your own goals.
Well, look, that's a book that I would never have considered picking up, Nick. So, I appreciate you bringing it up. I think, I reminisce, and even just talking about it, it's kind of reminding me of my childhood, but I guess that's just, hashtag 90s kids things. So, yeah, mate, I'll definitely get that. Look, it's been awesome chatting to you. I guess just to wrap things up here, and I reckon you've alluded to these quite strongly throughout the whole interview, but if you could offer someone who's on their own journey to financial independence, if you could just offer them 3 pieces of advice, what would you say?
I mean, start young if you can. That obviously makes a big difference. Compound interest and so on is definitely works in your favor. But also, it's never too late. So, start tomorrow, start today. Just get started would be the number one piece of advice. From my own personal experience, and I did kind of mention it already, the idea of geo arbitrage. So I earn money in Australia, but for the most part, I live in Nicaragua. So that allows me to have quite a high savings rate at the moment. But also, I also mentioned that we've got this kind of work from home culture that's becoming more popular now. So if you're currently living in Sydney, but suddenly you can work from home, then move somewhere cheaper. It definitely makes a huge difference, and it's more possible than ever to take advantage of it. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. And I guess the other one is start match betting or start some kind of side hustle. There's lots of things that you can do to boost your income a little bit. And then what you can do with that is you take it and you invest it, and you can invest it in shares, you can invest it in yourself. You can invest it in a new business. There's lots of things you can do, but just whatever money you're earning today, take it and use it and make sure that it earns you more tomorrow.
Get those dollars working for you.
Exactly.
Thanks very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a chat today. Look, if people want to learn more about match betting or they want to get in touch with you, how can people find out more?
Well, bonusbank.com.au. As I said, we've got a free membership that people can sign up for and learn the basics and so on. We also have an app that you can download if that works better for you. And again, that's free and you can get all the tutorials. We have a Facebook group, so you can search for us there. And we're available via email any time of the day. And, there's always someone happy to help. As I said, we've got the Discord server as well. So there's lots of places that you can reach out to us and ask questions, or, if you just want to clarify anything that we've talked about, then, like I said, I'm always happy to answer any questions that people have.
Awesome, Nick. Well, look, mate, it's pretty late here, so I reckon I'm gonna head to bed, and it's just the start of a beautiful Scottish day for you. So I'll let you crack on with the day, mate. It's been awesome. I'll catch you later.
All right, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Captain Fi Financial Independence Podcast. To read the transcripts or check out the show notes, head over to www.captainfi.com for all the details. If you have a question for the captain, make sure to get in touch. You might even make it on the airwaves. You can reach me online through the Captain Fi contact form or get in touch through the socials. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram, as well as a number of online finance and investing forums. And finally, remember, the information presented on the show and the links provided are for general information purposes only. They should not be taken as constituting professional financial advice. You should always do your own research when making any financial decisions and make sure it's appropriate for your personal circumstance.